We already know that sadly, 50% of marriages end in divorce.
But do we really know how that affects the children? We're going to talk about it. And this is Chick to Chick.
Carrie, this is a tough topic, but such an important topic, how divorce affects our children. Now, we both have been very transparent about our situations. You know, I got divorced, split up with my son's father, 21 years ago now? He was only 2 years old. And, in the beginning, there was tension and friction, but we both came to this understanding that we wanted to do what was best for our son. And so perhaps we went a little over the top. We did things together. We took our son to church together. We celebrated holidays together. We did everything we possibly could to try to make him feel like he was still loved, that although his mom and dad weren't together, we were still a family. It might not have been a conventional family, but we were still a family. We knew it was going to be hard on him. And so we tried. We did everything that we could. And even though we did, my son still had issues and he still struggled with it. And I know that your parents got divorced and it affected you as well.
Yeah, when you and I talked about this, I said to you, I'm Sean, because I was 2 years old when my parents were divorced. And I don't have memories of them doing anything collectively really with me, vacations, that kind of thing. We would do church and that kind of thing together. But my parents were very much friends with each other because, like you and your ex, they recognized that I was the most important part. And even though it failed on their ends, they weren't going to fail me. However, as the child of divorce, then you're thrown into a situation where both my parents remarried. That wasn't always easy. So there was this other layer of dynamic that I then had to take on. And I had to be able to shift in between houses and give up certain things that younger kids that are with both their parents don't have to. So even though I didn't have this ugly, angry divorce going on, I still didn't have a traditional, conventional way of growing up with both of my parents. So sure, it does affect you later on in life, 100%.
And I wonder if adults really understand what it's doing to the child, which brings us to our guest today, Katie Gleason. Katie, we're so grateful that you've decided to come on our podcast. You were the child of divorce. Katie, tell us what happened and how old you were.
Hi, thank you. First off, I just want to say that this is one of those topics that nobody likes to talk about, including the children, because we love our parents. We don't want to bring any shame or any hurt to anybody. But similarly, my parents, when they divorced, it was amicable enough. I never had seen any tension in our home. I was 7 years old. And my mom framed it as though this is what she needed to be happy. And what child doesn't want their parent to be happy? So I really embraced it like, okay, we're going to go on an adventure. And, my mom, over time, I guess, I don't know, when a child, everything is a little bit hard to navigate exactly what happened when, especially when you're that young. But I remember, packing up that car and everything we had was in that car. And I can remember driving away on a February day in 1978. And yeah, you go on and to me, it was an adventure. But then later you start to see, oh, okay, wait, some of this was not really fair to the kids. So.
And Katie, as you grew through in your teenage years, you say your parents were getting along. Did you just feel like, looking back on it, you were just sort of managing? Because if you're really young and you're thrown into this is an adventure, want mom to be happy. But now you're in a situation where you have a little more understanding as a young adult, late teens or whatever. How are you feeling during that time?
I was spared because my mom moved far away from my father. And we had I didn't have a mom's house and a dad's house. Home was home, and it was with my mom. But I never had to juggle from house to house. I would visit my dad maybe at Easter and summertime, but I never had to deal with, switching. Like each home, each family has a culture that you have to. I see you understand that completely.
I fully understand that. I love the way you just said that. Each home has its own little culture. You're absolutely
and
right.
Their children are forced to jump back and forth. Well, I only had to do that rarely. And so I just supported my mom, and I was maybe too much of a sounding board for her. I think that that's one of the common things that happens to children of a divorce. Sometimes boys are placed in the position of being the man of the house when they're too young. And I think sometimes girls end up being like the surrogate mom, taking care of household things, or being a sounding board like a girlfriend to their mom, which, really isn't appropriate a lot of times, but it's innocent. No one does these things, with ill intent. But through divorce, sometimes roles get reversed and things go a little bit strange. So
yeah, it's hard. It's very hard. As you carry this on now into adulthood, how has the divorce affected you as an adult? How did it affect your relationships? How has it affected your marriage? How has it affected your ability to be a mom?
Well, I honestly, until I was married with 3 kids, I would have said, no, the divorce didn't affect me. It was fine. I was happy. But it was when I got married, I was knee deep in kids. I had 3 kids, and it was hard. I thought, why is this so hard? The marriage, it finally occurred to me, I don't know what I'm doing. That's why it's hard. I never had an example. I don't know how to resolve conflict. I don't know what's normal in a marriage, because how could I know? And then you realize that, when the foundation is taken out from under you, it does have some repercussions that, you got to figure out as an adult. And so that's what I ended up doing. I realized I got to figure this out. So what did I do? I ended up going online. Thankfully, we have the internet, and I found some wonderful people who, were in the same boat, and ended up sharing and growing and learning and healing. And that's what we all have to do. I mean, it's whatever comes your way, it's up to us to figure out how to heal. And that's what I did.
I think it's interesting that you talk about, I was really fine. I didn't know any different. I thought everything was status quo, and it sort of sneaked up on you. I had a similar situation, although I was in college when it sneaked up on me, and I ended up going to a counselor. I didn't know that it was the ripple effect of having 2 sets of families, 2 sets of, as you put it so well, cultures. And the therapist said to me, you've had to be the hero. You've had to be the hero. I, was not rocking a boat either way. I was figuring out, identifying what was going on in each house. So I knew how to be in each house. Mm-hmm. That was for me. But it sounds to me like you had a situation that was similar just within your own home with your mom, where you kind of had to be the hero and define things. And then when you became in your own adult space, you were like, but wait a minute, I actually didn't really have a blueprint.
Exactly. And I think that's very common. I think kind of what you're describing is one of the effects of being an adult child of divorce. You miss boundaries because none of these decisions were ours to make. Our parents decide. We didn't get a vote in the divorce. They decided, and that was that. And the kids are just going along for the ride and doing the best they can. When you are in that position, you don't really set up boundaries, because how can you? And that continues and continues even after you're an adult, where you're still juggling. And Flora, not in your case with your child, and it sounds like Carrie, not in yours either, where your parents tried to be united. But for a lot of us, even like when our child's birthday comes, we have to pick a grandparent to be invited since they don't want to be in the same room. All these major events are still affected. It goes down generations. And so that's one of the things that, through these groups that have formed on Facebook, these private groups that I'm familiar with, that boundaries are an issue. Trust is an issue. When what is supposed to be an intact family is supposed to be the thing that gives you confidence and gives you the wings to fly isn't there, you're going to have whatever problems you would have had anyway. It's based on a shaky foundation.
It is.
So.
It's very difficult. You mentioned that kids get through it, and we say, oh, kids are resilient. Kids are resilient. They'll get through it. But as you pointed out, they don't have a choice. And they've just been handed this. And you also talked about support groups. And I wanted to bring up this book that you actually brought to my attention. It's called Primal Loss. And it's the now adult children of divorce are speaking out. And they're telling their stories in this book. It was written by Layla Miller. And I mean, I read the book. It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking to hear how divorce has affected these children who are now adults. And I know this book, you said this book is free, correct?
Yeah, she wrote this book because she realized, wait a minute, what is going on here? She was under the same assumption I was. Okay, divorce is a one-time event. It's hard for a year or two, and then the kids move on. But when this book came to be and she asked I think 7 or 8 questions regarding divorce, the responses were just devastating and eye-opening and, and life-changing, really, because I can say as a child of divorce reading this, it's the first time you connect the dots and you realize, I'm not alone. This is a thing that has affected me in many ways that you don't put together until you step back and hear other voices. So it's a very powerful, although difficult book to read.
Katie, what is your final message? And I know you and I have talked about this at great length. What's your final message here? And do you think we should be shifting more from getting divorced to working harder to save our marriages?
I do, Flora. I think that's the number one thing. Marriage is hard, right? But divorce is hard. Separation is hard. And, you choose your hard. Healing your marriage is probably the best thing you could do for your children. And, you hear parents say, oh my gosh, I would die for my kids. And I guess my question is, would you live for them? Would you live for them? And take that on? No child asks to be born. And it's up to us to give them the foundation, to give them, what they need as best we can. And I'm not talking, there are circumstances that are beyond what, is a healthy, safe environment. I'm not referring to that, but for the most part, most marriages are low conflict. Most marriages, if you take divorce off the table, 5 years later, they've shown that couples tend to do better. Now, if divorce is on the table, it's real hard to ignore that escape hatch. So take it off the table. And if you're in a hard marriage, throw every single thing you have at it to fix it. Just do it all.
Great message. Katie, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for being open. I know this was tough for you to do, but we both appreciate it. And we think that your message is going to resonate with a lot of people. So thank you.
Thank you, Flora. Thank you, Carrie.
Carrie, I think both of us
you're coming up for air, aren't you?
Yeah. I mean, when Katie said, you die for your kids, but will you live for your kids? And what a profound statement, and it made me think of something that a friend of mine who has been struggling in her marriage for 20 years now. And she said to me, I think about this and I wonder, why didn't I have the courage to walk away like you did? And I turned it and I said, you know what? And you know what I think? I think, why didn't I have the courage to stay like you did?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's a great statement. And I think, you and I always advocate for not having a divorce, trying, for the marriage to work. We talk about that a lot. And I think that we all have to sort of soften our hearts, and we have to recognize that when we entered into a marriage, we loved each other, we had this bright future, and really work hard to trigger out, to get back to those fundamentals and look at our children in the faces and say, you're worth it. You're worth it for us. Even if you're an adult, you're worth it for us to all be together and to stay together. So this was a powerful podcast, and I'm certain it's really resonating with many people. And that's what we try to do here, right, Flora? We really try to have powerful messages that sit with people and maybe make big changes.
Absolutely. If we can help one family, if we can help one child, then boy, isn't it all worth it?
Yep, it sure is. And we hope that you appreciated the messaging with today's podcast and that you will come back when we chirp about another topic.